Okay. Meanwhile, this final panel will address online censorship. It features experts on artificial intelligence, algorithm bias, algorithm aesthetics, and cyberbullying. And it will be moderated by the visual artist Alex Markwith, which is here. Prepare, but if it's okay, I will just give you the microphone.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, and then you can...
Should we all go up on stage?
I think so, yeah. Cool.
Maybe I'll take the end seat here if the panelists want to step in. Hi, everyone. So this is the fourth panel today, and we're going to be talking about navigating art and censorship online. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm going to try not to read from my notes the whole time, but let's start by welcoming the panelists, and I'll go through and introduce them first. On the left, we have Majella Clarke, who is a conductor, oboist, pianist, and sound artist based between Sydney, Australia, and Helsinki, Finland. Next to Majella, we have Taika, and please forgive me if I mispronounce anyone's name. You can correct me.
It was almost perfect.
Taika is a smart artist, AI doublepreneur, and speaker. And next to me, we have Säde Haveri, who is data governance manager at Relic Solutions, which is a supply chain and retail planning platform backed by AI and machine learning technology, and one of the founders of Helsinki Data Week. So, thank you for joining us. So, the topic again is censorship in art and culture online. And I want to start right away with talking about AI, because today when we think about anything digital or online, AI is maybe the technology that's developing the fastest. And I want to ask, for the first question, it's going to be a question that each of you have some time to answer. What would you say is the role of AI in the art world, and how would you see that role sort of evolving in the near future? So maybe start on the left with Majella.
Yeah, so thanks. So how we're seeing artificial intelligence evolve in the world, I think that it depends on our software and our hardware. And when we look back in history and we see that there's been AI winters, quite often we've hit a roadblock with hardware or software, and what our computational abilities are. And every time we have a huge development in one of those areas in computational processing, then we find that we have a new era of technology open up to us. And I think with AI and art, in my opinion, I believe we're at the beginning of finding and discovering new aesthetics. It's a new era of aesthetics in our art, and it means that we have to ask ourselves, you know, what is it to be human and to express ourselves as humans with machines, and you know, to what degree do we want to give machines agency over our creative practice versus take some of that agency back?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really good opener. Let's, Taika, how would you say you feel about the role of AI in art?
Well, I'm sure everybody knows that nowadays the most common way to create art is to write a text prompt and AI gives you an image. But there are also many tools that will enhance and build upon what you have already learned to create by hand. So you can, for example, nowadays already guide AI with your own drawings. You can draw a human in a pose and give it to AI
and AI will create a new piece of art based on that. So you can iterate or the iteration is very versatile already. So I see that will only evolve further.
Right, so there are already many ways of working with AI as an artist, right? Which are only developing quite quickly, I could say. Even comparing to, say, last year, there are many more tools available. Yeah. Säde.
Now, if we think about, in general, there's lots of debate about where we are going with AI in general, but I think some of the prevailing thoughts, and what I also believe, is that it's a supportive intelligence. So artificial intelligence is something that will support us. So we have co-pilots in IT, for example, something that helps you code faster, something that we have proofreading, things that help you fix your text, this kind of thing. So I see it as that this same thing, if this is the general direction that technology will go, that is something that supports you, helps you to be faster, helps you to be more efficient, then this should be the direction it also goes with art. So.
Right, so AI, yeah, I think one of the ways it's very commonly said is that AI is a tool, right? Because I think there's fear sometimes that AI is taking away from artists some sort of creative agency, or it's replacing the role of artists. So I think that's good to think about, that it can be a co-pilot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a second part of that question, actually. I'm thinking we talked a little bit about how it works for us, or sort of we can work with AI as artists, but for cultural institutions, do you think AI has an impact on the institutions that artists engage with, in addition to being involved in their studio practices? Majella, I can start with you on that.
Yeah, so absolutely, yes. We have, I'm in education, I'm a lecturer, and we now have guidelines in academic integrity policies and ethics on how we use artificial intelligence in education, especially with the proliferation of large language models like ChatGPT and Copilot. I think that, what that means is we're seeing the amount of information that we've got to, that students now have access to, and the assignments that we're setting, we now have to take a look at how are we assessing and validating knowledge in this era of large language models. And there's an ethics aspect to it as well, because, large language models, they're trained on something, and it's not human, it's just a machine. You see these words, AI hallucination, or, ChatGPT hallucination. And it means that you can, if it's, the database isn't secure, or if it isn't, well developed, then it's likely to, generate. And it's likely to, you can give it any question and it wants to generate you an answer. And it doesn't have any filters to be able to clean that. And if that's in the hands of a novice and a student who's still learning about their practice or their field of knowledge, and it doesn't only apply to the arts but also into sciences and social sciences as well, we have to always ask ourselves the question, where are we drawing the lines in terms of, you can do this, but should you do it? And that's the ethics. And at least at the University of the Arts in Helsinki, they've got an ethics policy which clearly defines what you can do with, for example, large language models.
Yeah, we talked about, I had a workshop earlier, some of the audience members were in there, about using AI in visual arts, and one point that came up is that whatever prompt you give it, it's going to give you some sort of output back. It's never going to say to you, I don't like this prompt, or this doesn't make any sense, or I refuse to work with this because it's for whatever reason, it's biased, or it's bigoted, or it's hate speech. It's not going to tell you no.
Actually, in some cases it will, because they are now building some, safeguards into this, because there were some cases that people were, for example, building bombs or some other not so nice stuff, and it was giving instructions for this. So nowadays there are protective measures being developed so that you can't get answers. Also, actually, stock market, it was asking like which stocks I should buy, and it was actually relatively good, so this was blocked as well.
But in the stock market?
Yeah.
I didn't hear about this one actually.
Yeah, so someone was asking stock tips, what stocks to buy, and it was actually answering these, and then
That's
it was
good.
blocked
Yeah.
because it's actually illegal to give guidance, although this is again a very interesting gray area bit. But they are building these safe rails, but the building of the safe rails and making of the legislation, this is all ongoing, so we don't know where they will sit.
Right. Yeah, maybe I was too quick of me to say that it doesn't exist, but it is a developing situation, and that gets to the point of censorship, right? Which is, to what level should we have safeguards, or to what level should we have creative freedom when dealing with these tools, right? Taika, did you have something you want to add to our thinking about institutions or?
Yeah, I think that because AI isn't going anywhere anymore, we should, I think the best would be that we would remain open-minded and curious about AI, like not depending on institutions or people or like whoever. Fear is something that limits us. That's what I think.
As artists, yeah, I think creative freedom is really important for artists. And thinking about that, the next question is for Majella. How do you think that AI affects the amount of agency that artists have over their practice?
Well, it depends on the type of AI that's being used and how it's being used. You know, of course, these text-to-image, text-to-audio, text-to-text prompts, the only part of the agency is your input. You have absolutely no agency on the output that is generated. On the other hand, you can take that generation and start to work with it, and then you're bringing more agency into the artistic practice. I think that, you know, we're not, like generative AI is just one area of artificial intelligence. We've got other areas of artificial intelligence that we can also bring into our artistic practice that do give us agency. For example, you know, we can use dimension reductionality and you know, real-time audio variational autoencoder models to be able to give ourselves more agency in our practice and make musical instruments where you can map it to the latent space, and it gives you sound in real time based on your gesture. And I think that that's something that's, you know, changing the way we practice dance, choreography, conducting, of course, movement in the artistic space. And so I do think it depends on the models that are used and how it's applied in artistic practice, and of course the imagination of the artistic individual. And we're seeing lots of different examples how this can be applied, new ideas.
Yeah. So you think we could say maybe that still thinking of AI kind of as the co-pilot or a collaborator, artists still have control as the users over the programs.
Yeah, if they want.
So it's not taking control from us, but.
Not if they want. I mean, it's up to the artist, because I think it comes back to the identity of the artist, and, you know, identity and expression of identity are, you know, central to the practice of what you are doing. And I think you always have to go back and ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think, you know, do you want to bring AI into that? Do you want to bring generative AI into that? And I think that when you are comfortable with that question, I'm happy to bring generative AI into my practice and work with it, then you are ready for that discussion. How much agency am I willing to trade off in my artistic practice by using generative AI?
Yeah, I think it's good to say when you are using generative AI, there is an amount of unpredictability, right?
Yeah.
You don't exactly know what you're going to get when you put in the prompt.
Yeah.
So, but that is a surprise.
Yeah,
that's part of the practice.
That's exactly it. And I think it goes into this censorship, you know, at least in the educational sector. You know, when we go to do a text-to-image prompt in the class, we've got to be very, very careful as educators. We have no control what comes out. We might trigger people with whatever comes out. We might have the most innocent prompt, and then it could be the most grotesque image. We have absolutely, we have to have this awareness, and in a way, I think it's forcing us to just take a moment and ask ourselves, should we be self-censoring when we are in a public space and we're sharing artistic practice in real time, especially when it comes to using large language models and generative AI?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Majella. Taika, I want to ask you about the role of originality in your work. And I'd also like if you could elaborate a bit more on the term smart artist, because that might be something in the audience. I'm not sure if everyone has heard the term before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so smart artist is a title that I came up with when I began 2 years ago. Many people called themselves AI artists, but I didn't want to limit myself, so I invented a term so that I can combine artificial intelligence and human intelligence, because AI is only a part of my workflow. I would say maybe 50% and 50% is created by human and AI. So intelligent artist doesn't sound that cool, so smart artist just rolls a bit better, so that's why I chose it.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue better, that's right. And intelligent sounds too, how do you say, academic or too analytical.
Yeah, I'm not academic at all.
No? Oh. But, yeah, thank you. And Säde, maybe you can tell us more about analytical, since you're coming from this data governance side. What would you say are some of the challenges that artists might have regarding copyright issues? That's one of the main questions that we have with artificial intelligence. When artists are using generative AI programs, it's giving the result by analyzing very large data sets, right? So if I'm an artist and I prompt AI, like Majella or Taika says, to produce an image for me, I gave it the prompts, but where did it get the other knowledge it has, right? There's a pool of information that the AI has already.
It's kind of like AI is actually data. So what you get out of the AI is what you have put into it, in a sense. So like Majella says, the grotesque image, if there's no grotesque image, then the likelihood that you will get one is very low, not zero, but very low. But it's like when the artificial intelligence or model, I mean it's a model, so when the model takes input, it doesn't actually, it can't produce exactly the same thing that it has gotten, so it doesn't know any of the input, but it has a mathematical model. For example, for a language model, it starts producing words by, it gives a letter, and then it calculates from a pool of likely letters that would follow this and selects one on random. This is why it produces different kind of words. So in a sense, the likelihood that you put something there and it produces exactly the same thing is super low.
Almost zero.
Almost zero. Not zero, but almost
with
zero.
Probability, you can never have a zero, right?
Yes.
You can never have 0 or 100.
No, you can have very, very rare events. But still, it's like what it produces is approximation or an estimation. And when we get to copy, the current thinking is that to have rights to something, you have to have a human. So the human is someone who can own rights, so machine can't own rights. So if we consider whatever is produced to be done by an artificial intelligence, then it's free game, so it's not owned by anyone. You can use it.
Is there a threshold then for when would it be considered to have been produced by a human versus an AI?
Super good question.
Yeah?
Probably nothing definite. So if the majority of the work is done by human and you use some artificial intelligence, then probably you have the rights. But this is probably because, again, there is no exact legislation or rules for this. If it's done by AI and, for example, for image generation, if I ask for a picture of a cat with a hat, then me asking that, giving that prompt is not enough to say that I had something to do with it, so it's still free game. But this is like a very gray area, and the legislation and as said, the standards are forming at the moment. The other things to consider is also that if you use AI as part of your art, you're probably using some technology or platform. Those can actually have different kind of rules, and they can say something about the ownership. So if you generate something, in some cases platform might say that in some cases it owns it. So you need to read the fine print,
right?
What the platforms are saying, and also there are some country-specific differences in this. So different country legislations say different things about this. So yeah, you have to be aware of quite a lot of different moving factors. And of course now EU is coming out with EU-centric legislation, which is again still forming. Now there is the AI Act, but how this will definitely change and what direction they will take. Yeah, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I know that there are actually several of these pending lawsuits where different parties are concerned about who gets to own the results, or maybe EU and US, there are different perspectives about governmental action or restrictions on AI versus the freedom of business to use AI. And maybe like the question of censorship or restricting certain types of speech, this is also a developing field, right? Thank you. Majella, back to you. I want to think about algorithmic aesthetics, right? So the fact is there is something of algorithmic aesthetics. People are using these generative programs to generate art. What are some of the advantages, do you think, of doing so? And what are maybe some of the challenges of working with algorithmic aesthetics? And maybe you want to elaborate on the term algorithmic aesthetics a bit, yes?
All right, yeah. So when we talk about algorithmic aesthetics, we have different reasons why we have algorithms. Business wants to optimize. They want to use algorithmic aesthetics to optimize, maximize profit, minimize cost, and that's what they set that algorithm to. That's a particular type of aesthetic. It gives a particular type of output. In science, we want to be able to condense a lot of information so that certain features appear or certain patterns can be read. And that's a particular type of algorithmic aesthetics. In art and in generative AI, we want, generative AI's randomness. That's a particular type of algorithm, and it's a particular aesthetic. So what are the pros and cons of this? I think it first of all depends on, because we're really at just at the beginning, our discovery stages of what these aesthetics mean in creative practice. And, we've still got to figure out how do we feel about them. When we see art and of course it makes headlines because it sells for 6 figures, we all have our ears up for some reason. Yeah. But then we have a very deep feeling about how we might feel about it. It's like, is that art? How is that art? And on one hand, I would say, is it art, or do I like it? These are questions of the 20th century art that's been... Exactly.
So we're dealing, I feel like, with some sort of frontier here in the art world where AI is challenging our concept of what is art.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and that's from the aesthetics. That actually, when we want to talk about how are we using algorithms, if we don't have that idea of algorithmic aesthetics, all of the things that would be generated would be very, very similar. So when we want to look at, under the hood or inside the black box, we have to take a look at the algorithms, because that's what's giving us the decisions and the rules that generate what we're using, or that are giving us the output of what we're using in artificial intelligence. And so some of the pros is, by being aware of algorithmic aesthetics, you're actually being able to broaden your knowledge on how to use AI as a tool. I think that, some of the challenges that we see are that we don't have enough knowledge and discussion on AI and aesthetics and algorithmic aesthetics, and we're quite, I guess you could say, ignorant of this particular discussion that we should be having. And it does go into censorship, you know. Are there certain algorithms that we should be not allowing? Like you said in the ChatGPT, we've got safeguards, and ethics and safeguards are certain things that should impact algorithmic aesthetics. Really, it's a renaissance for philosophy when we talk about AI, because we need to go back and understand phenomenology and aesthetics and ethics all over again. And we've neglected this in our education.
Right. Yeah, there's another interesting point is that actually there's the question of when did AI begin, right? It's become very popular in the past, say, 3, 4, 5 years, but it goes back at least to the 50s and 60s if you look at visual arts. And it does go back to ancient Greece, if you follow the philosophy back far enough, when Daedalus had the concept already of arts or music or writing that would be produced automatically. This is before they had computers. They had analog abacus. But the philosophy was already there, thinking of what is the role of human creativity. And now we're seeing it with AI. So, thank you. Taika, thinking about censorship, right, again, we talk a lot about censorship with the algorithm. Maybe we have to put some safeguards to protect people or to stop hate speech or stop spreading false information. But there's also this self-censorship, right? And with that idea of self-censorship, I want to ask, have you ever experienced some sort of harassment online or in the digital space? And how has that affected your work, if so, if that's something you're comfortable telling us?
Yeah, sure, especially when I started a few years ago, and I was one of the first people in Finland who adopted AI as part of my workflow. There were really, really weird comments and hateful comments, and
because you're using AI?
Yeah. I was one of the first. So I was like an easy target, of course. And I can't deny that it didn't affect me, but still I already saw the potential and all the possibilities of AI at that moment. So I didn't let the hateful comments
so yeah, you're
limit myself.
Ahead of the curve, and you pushed forward despite.
Yeah.
But I mean that is a big problem, though, isn't it? The criticism that you can face when you put your work out there, and I feel maybe if you put your work online, you have automatically a wider audience sort of hidden behind the screen, right? Versus if you put your work in the gallery, maybe you face more intense criticism online. Do you think that's true? Or is there something to that idea?
Yeah, of course, and especially when people use nicknames, it's much easier to comment behind that if you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to tell your real name.
Yeah.
So of course.
You see your face, you have your cartoon avatar, and you don't have to use your name.
And I believe it's ultimately based on fear. It's something unknown. It's something that's going to take your job. So people are afraid, and when they are afraid, they make rash decisions and react.
Right, so the hateful comments maybe come from some fear or insecurity. Yeah, that's...
Instead of curiosity towards AI. I think curiosity would be like a better approach.
Totally. Yeah, so you don't let the comments hurt you then?
I don't let them limit myself. Of course, I feel a bit hurt after those, but then I just go on.
Good. Yeah, and I think curiosity is the best way too. I think fear hurts creativity, doesn't it? Yeah. Thank you, Taika. Säde, I think that with that in mind, can we maybe talk about how can artists protect their privacy online a bit? Are there good practices and bad practices, things that we should be doing or not be doing when it comes to sharing our work online?
That's actually it's a very tricky topic if we consider this from the perspective that you would like to protect your original art, for example, from being used in some models or copied or somehow. Like when I was thinking about this question, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is that if you are on open internet, openly displaying your art or produces or whatever it is, then it's very difficult to protect it from someone using it for their own purposes. Like, I was thinking about this, that if you have a bike and you leave it outside without locking it, it's there. In Finland, most likely it will be there when you return.
That's quite unique to Finland
yes,
in some ways.
It is, but it's most probably there.
Although they do get stolen on Säde, where I live. I should throw that in.
But that's a good area.
You would think so, yes.
But anyway, there is the bike, so it might be there, but kind of like nothing is preventing someone from, in a sense, physically from taking it, except it is our cultural custom not to take others' property, even if it's possible, and it's also not legal. But this is kind of its law, and our practices that keep the bike in general there, except if someone does want to use it for their purposes, they can. So it's a little bit the same. So if your art is there, if it's downloadable, if you don't have a website that is password secured somehow, that's one way to prevent. Companies actually use these kind of techniques that they can have websites which are not machine readable. So they actually block this kind of machine to machine. I've come across this sometimes when I've worked with artificial intelligence. I use that also for gathering information on things. And it will actually tell me that I ask for information, for example, on a technology, and they tell me they can't give it because they can't read the page, so the page is kind of protected. But this is, of course, not something a small entrepreneur or individual artist
can sounds maybe pretty expensive to implement.
Yeah.
I don't know. Actually, maybe you can tell us a bit. When you're a data governance manager, that's the correct title. What does that role entail?
Well, I worked with big companies, and kind of in that role, like what the goal of the role is that I would make sure that people who need data in their work know where they can find the data, they get access to it, and they can use it, and the data is good. And I mean, from, as I said, artificial intelligence perspective, artificial intelligence is the data that you feed into it. So kind of if that is good, then you can expect the outputs to be good. And again, if that is bad, like for example, what we've seen with some of these that have read our discussion forums in the nice communication way, or how we are very not so nice to each other in those, then these first started speaking in the same way. So it's kind of like artificial intelligence will give us what we feed into it.
There's like a snowball effect too, right? Since the AI learns from input, right? So if you give it one input and then another input and then another input, there's a snowball effect. So yeah, maybe there's a problem then, like we said, since people do like to spread bad or negative information online.
So, but from a company perspective, what I try to do is make sure that the data that the company uses for its internal processes and decisions is of good quality and suitable for the use cases. So, wider perspective, but I'm of course also an entrepreneur, so I use these services to, I write on LinkedIn, so I use it as a co-pilot to help me and basically make my processes and writing faster.
Good. Yeah. How are we doing on time, by the way? Good. Great, because we have one last question here for the panelists that I would like everyone to answer, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for some questions. So with the last question, we've thought about AI and censorship and copyright. So these are serious issues, right, to think about. But also, when we think about like the day-to-day lives of artists, one of the main things that always comes up is the idea that AI is displacing artists' jobs or artists' role in society. So the question I want to ask is there a legitimate concern that AI is stealing artists' jobs? And Majella, I'm going to start with you.
I guess it's yes and no, and it depends. It depends, because it can do the job of humans much more efficiently. I mean, that's the value in it. It's the time it takes to, for example, write a piece of music compared to a human is significantly less, and so it can be very attractive to do that. But what I do see the opportunity in, and I think that a lot of people and artists are using it, is what we call augmented intelligence, where it is, of course, like you say, being a smart artist like
Augmented
Taika.
intelligence, is that the term?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's one of the terms. I think that Taika's practice definitely sounds like the kind of practice where you use AI, but then of course the human has a lot of agency in the creative output. And I think that it's that it's the era where we're going to be looking at we're going to see that proliferate. And at the same time, I don't necessarily think our fine arts, sculpture, our handwork is going to be replaced. I mean, I think that we will still, have that. And we see this evolve through time. I mean, if we go back to the 1950s, think about photography. And then, yes, Kodak got disrupted. I mean, that was a business model disruption with digital cameras. But now, anybody can take a photo on their phone. It hasn't replaced photography. It's a new tool. And these new tools mean that more people can enjoy the practice. So I think it depends how the tools evolve, how we educate and introduce these tools, and how accessible and democratic we make these tools. If we make them openly accessible for everybody, then you're more likely to get more people use it. But not necessarily, does it mean that the job is replaced? I think that's a business question.
Yeah, I think so. I think when people say that, they're concerned about not necessarily jobs, but from an economic standpoint, if it will hurt the artists. I guess there are two sides to it in a way, because one would be, is AI replacing the role of the artist in society? And the second is it harming artists economically?
Yeah.
And that, I don't know.
I think from my perspective, it can harm artists economically, because people that sit behind the procurement, for example, if you're procuring graphic designers in your branding, now people can just go over to an AI logo generator and do the branding themselves.
So it might replace, more in design fields, I think, yeah. I think there is
I think it depends on how mature the AI is. So we see with computer vision and visual arts, it's much more mature than audio and music. It's just the level of computational processing, as I said in the beginning. With visual arts, you can, it's very easy there's so many AI logo generators. Logo design is actually a big business for graphic designers. But you see that, all this area of graphic design is being rapidly replaced and disrupted, I would say, by AI logo generators. And we've seen, all right, the first generation of AI logo generators, very novel, everyone was using them, but now they've got this more humane thing. They give the AI logo generators different personalities now. And this now makes it as if it's, there's a person sitting on that desk. It's an imaginary personality made up by marketeers that are making the software. So I think it's a business model question that, does it hurt the economy of artists? I think there is potential for it too, yes.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
I was just thinking that I just read a book called Cloud Empires. It's about a big digital platform, so Amazon and this kind of, and their model and how it actually changes like selling and social and relation with government and workers. And it had this example that there are these, like when Amazon came as a small person, you were able to open a shop and sell different kind of things. But it happened to some of the sellers that if they managed to produce a good product that, for example, they were making it in China somewhere, nothing proprietary about the product, but a kind of better version of something. And if this was selling very well, what happened is that at some point Amazon actually started producing the same product by themselves and selling it. And first it was so that they were first in the kind of, when you search for this product, you came first. But at some point they switched themselves to be first and you were on the bottom. And this was, I think in the book it said this was about 3% of the sellers that this happens, which is not, it's still hundreds of people.
3% of
all Amazon.
All Amazon sellers.
Yes, so it's hundreds of people still, even though it's a small percentage.
I thought, yeah, I think maybe even thousands.
Yeah, it could be actually, yeah, you're right. But this is kind of like that if AI is limited to very few platforms, then it is the risk that platforms will actually take over some people or some people who can't protect themselves. Yeah. So if this grows too centralized, then that is kind of my fear that government regulation will not do anything anymore.
That's a very good point, because when you say Amazon, it's hard to feel bad for Amazon, right? But you remember that Amazon is now this platform where you have independent sellers selling their goods. So the people selling on Amazon are actually small businesses or individual.
And they're dependent on the platform, because if they leave, they lose their client base because it's on the platform. So in a sense, they are, it's very difficult for them to vote with their legs if they don't like the rules. Right. And this is kind of the fear that if, at least what I think is that if this whole thing gets too centralized, so everything is governed by only a few big, and we don't have any country level legislation because these are like global companies, so it's very difficult to
That's right.
have, so then this kind of like, they would be able to do this and get away with it, basically.
Yeah, another point on that, I just remembered, I actually am bringing up something I don't know anything about, but that's the best thing to do, yeah. So I just saw that in the US, there was a ruling against Google. Did you see this? This is in the headlines like today, yesterday, that maybe Google is going to be broken up into smaller companies because it's been ruled that they have a monopoly over the search engine. But
yeah, I know. There's been debate on this, but let's see.
Yeah. Let's leave it. Yeah, let's leave that one in the air. Taika, can you tell us how you feel about, since you are an artist you are a smart artist, so how do you feel about AI, and how does that affect you, your job, your place in society?
Well, I think that AI will become this one medium, like painting, like drawing. It will become a common thing and not like a hype thing, which it still is. And those who are curious and not fearful will want to adopt the best parts, those parts that work for them the best, into their workflows, into their art. So AI could even become like this very boring, everyday thing. It's not like super exciting or super like scary thing anymore.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's been very controversial to say AI, and especially I feel like more so maybe in arts than in general conversation. When you have artists, still sometimes you get these very polarized views, right? Some people hate it, and some people are using it in their practice all the time. But maybe we're already kind of at the level where it's becoming less of a buzzword and more of a mundane, daily thing, just part of life.
Yeah, I think so, and I also would like to, we have a lot of black and white thinking, like some people put the walls up and are like, no, I don't want to get to know AI at all. And then there's these hype people who are, yay, AI is the best and I want to use AI everywhere. And there's this divide between traditional artists and AI artists still. But I would like to unite them, because if we're all together, it's better for all the artists.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I don't have anything against that. Did anyone else want to add something to the topic?
I could still say that because I feel I've talked a lot about doom and gloom now, but I still actually, I believe in this co-pilot thing, so I believe that this can be a really good tool. Just that, as said, there is a lot of gray area going around now because there isn't, there is these legislative questions, there is these platform questions, and about, coming back to the bike, at the moment in the internet world, if the bike is unlocked, you can take it. So it's not behaving maybe the same way that our real world is. But I think that because it's vague at the moment, that's also an opportunity, because it means that if we are taking part of the discussion, then we can maybe make the legislation and governments and everything go in a better direction, also for the smaller, because I think that these big companies are ruling the kind of the dialogue at the moment. And I think it's very interesting that there are these kind of like court cases that should Google be split. We'll see what happens, if anything. But
when I saw that, I was actually quite surprised to see it. Because they're saying Google has a monopoly, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess I wonder what is a monopoly in this case, right? How could they say Google has a monopoly if, for example, Meta doesn't have a monopoly? So
yeah.
I'm an artist also using AI. I'm not like a technical person that understands the laws about monopolies, but yeah, let's see what happens.
I would say in the end that if things are vague, there is still possibility to affect that they will go in a better direction. And I do believe that, well, any technology can be used for good or bad. So I hope that we find a way to use this for good and, I can do the boring stuff. I can concentrate on the interesting bits.
Yeah, we can concentrate on the creative part.
Yeah, and AI can do
the rest.
Yes, that would be a good division of labor.
Yeah, I think so. Majella, are we ready for the Q&A? Or?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Alex Kolarova.
Thank you very much. This was really interesting. I would like to ask Majella about the use of AI in music, because I learned from you actually that it has been for many, many years, since like 1950s, used in music. But it's not really talked about so much as it is in visual arts. And I'm wondering if you could speak from a perspective of an artist who is a composer and creates music. What is the situation in the field there? Yeah. Are also artists afraid of it, or are they using it for their advantage, or what's the deal?
Well, for one thing, you can't see it. And I think that we like to see what we're working with, even in music. I think in the 1950s, the types of machines that were being used to compose music, they weren't really spitting out notes. They were spitting out numbers. So you'd get these long scripts of ones and zeros and ones and zeros, and the humans would still have to compose. And that's what we call computer-assisted algorithmic composition, and that's where the roots of AI in music and audio come from. And so I think that, why did that lag behind? Vera Molnar's beautiful works in the visual arts, and we saw a proliferation of that as well in visual arts. And people, I think they could relate to it, they could see it, and it's like, wow, that's a picture that I can see, and they try and make some sense of it, and they can have a discussion about it. But when we go and play music from, for example, Xenakis, this extremely complex music that there's been no type of aesthetic that has been that complex before. So we've reached the peak of complexity in our music, in our mathematics, in our algorithms. I think that a lot of people felt excluded from that. And it's because of this exclusion. They couldn't have a discussion about it. It was all in a black box. And because we couldn't see what was in that black box, we couldn't understand what was in that black box. It kind of didn't get the same visibility in a metaphorical and in a real sense as the visual arts. And I think that's why people have been like, what is this music that's generated by a machine? Is it real? To what extent is there humanness in it, and they can't connect those things together. Whereas with the visual arts, you can see, all right, what did the human do and what did the machine do? And it makes a little bit more sense because we can actually see some connections there, and in that abstract black box, we can create a few associations that we can bring to visual arts. Yeah. Did I answer the question?
Could you maybe talk more about the contemporary music and the use of AI in it? Because I believe it is used in majority of the music we hear in the radio.
That's interesting. I think that what we use there is business algorithm aesthetics to define and to guide our generation of popular music. So we know from people's Spotify lists and people's iTunes lists, what is the tempo that people are most likely to listen to? What are the harmonic sequences that people are most likely to listen to? These are not creative aesthetics. These are optimization aesthetics. These are business aesthetics. And that's having a much more profound effect on our generation of music in the popular sense. So yeah, and what we see from that is that there's more homogeneity in our popular culture.
Any other questions?
I wanted to add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's not about arts, but affects culture. I had a very interesting conversation with translators. The use of IA or as computer-assisted translation has been going on for a very long time. So it is a bit similar case, but we don't see it so easily.
Yeah, thank you so much for a fruitful discussion. And maybe my question is stupid because it's a totally new topic for me. But I wonder how you, as an artist, see and reflect on your art from inside. I mean, how do you see it as a process, or AI art is only counted as some result? I will try to explain what I mean, because I think I'm in performative arts, and I think in this kind of comparing with this, and we have some genre that could be more or less similar as I understand it, and that is happening. It's when an artist starts some kind of performance and push the topic into the audience, and the audience is a medium that produce the performance. So the artist have some vision, but she never know what will the performance look like, because it's going to the audience that produce it. So I see a little bit of similarity here, because anyway the artist, as I understand, have some vision, but push this prompt into a model, into algorithm. So, and we got what we got. So you say we got something unexpected. Usually, that is really interesting thing. Yes, but how do you see it? What do you see it as a result? I mean, this the work, the picture, for example, that is a final result of this process. And do we you sell in the market this final result, or it's a prompt, and all this process of producing is also, inside this, I mean, where it starts and where it ends, that we call piece of art made by you and AI. I think that is.
Yeah.
Like,
Were you directing the question to a specific?
I thought maybe Taika and Majella could answer,
Yeah.
but of course, if
I'd love to have a stab at it too, if they want to go first. Do you want to answer, Taika? Or?
Yeah, I can begin. So how I start my work is that I always do a hand-drawn sketch first. So I don't start from the text prompt. The text prompt is one part of the art creation process, but I create the sketch, I feed it to AI, AI gives me ideas, then I, for example, put the AI's idea or the AI-generated picture into a digital painting program. I paint over it the parts that I think could be better or the parts that I want to alter. Then I throw it back to AI and tell AI do this and this and this. Then I put it to Photoshop and edit the picture, and it's like this iterative process. Yeah, so I very rarely create images so that I just use a text prompt and then there's the result. So at least in my line of work, I don't think it's like an AI-produced result. That is, of course, debatable, and also the limit, like how transformative is the art, and can you separate which parts are created by AI and which parts are created by me? That would be like taking a baked cake and then trying to separate the ingredients from there. Oh, there's the flour and there's the water, and it's like, it's impossible. So, did that answer at all your question?
Yeah, I mean, if you, for example, making an exposition, you are putting there the final result, or the several results that were, between the first picture, first sketch, and the final picture. I mean. Okay, I don't know what I mean, but I mean there is it's so interesting when this kind of thing is forming. So you just do not know where is the result actually, and I mean the question is not where is the machine and where is the person, but what is the result and how many of them could be in between.
Well, if I understood correctly, there can be like hundreds of iterations and like small details and small parts of the workflow. So it's like this huge combination of different steps, which is the final result. And of course, there's the element of randomness. Even if I try to affect the output as best as possible, there's always something random happening. And I think that's actually the fun part of creating with AI. There can be some fun random results too.
But I think when we spoke earlier, you said that you've also done videos of how you produce your art. Mm-hmm. So do you consider that art, or is it more a tutorial?
I think it's more of a tutorial, but of course that can also be seen as art.
To answer your question, I'll tell you my experience. When I first used the MuseNet algorithm to compose a piece of music, I could not call myself a composer. In fact, I felt shame, I felt disgust, even though it was a great composition. I played it to a lot of my colleagues, and they were like, oh, wow, you did this. And I was like, well, not really. I created it, I made some decisions, but I didn't have full agency, and therefore I would not call myself a composer by using generative AI to generate a composition. Then it goes to where you're saying, where does it start and where does it end? I think that's one of the limitations of generative AI, especially in music. It's quite linear. Music, you have a start, you have a development, you have a finale. And for AI, it can't tell. It cannot tell how to start a piece of music appropriately, how to develop it. It can develop it, for sure. That's what the whole generative AI genius is. And it certainly does not know how to end. It goes into that uncanny valley. I think that it's, where do you start and where do you end? I would say I would err on caution because we're still in that very much the infancy of understanding the tool. And the tool will develop. We're just at the beginning of this development. So I do think we need to just be a little careful, humble, and approach it. I go back to 100 years ago. In music, Schoenberg made this 12-tone scale. It is probably the first time we see outright formula in music. And people walked out of the concert hall. It was called the Scandal Concert in Vienna. And people were angry. They were so angry that, you know, this particular 12-tone row method had been used to generate music. It was human-generated music, but it followed precise rules so that there was nothing human in it. Or that was the argument. Of course, when we go now to Schoenberg's music, we're like, oh wow, he's genius. It's like he made visuals with the notes that we only see now, well after he's gone, and we see that there was other aesthetics in there, rhythm and texture and dynamics that could convey a story, and that is definitely human expression. So, you know, I wouldn't want to exit the concert hall for scandalized AI. I would say we just have to be a little bit on the cautious side of how we label things, because maybe we don't have the words yet.
Yeah, I like the example of Schoenberg because it, again, deals with, at the time, people would have said Schoenberg is not music, right?
Exactly.
It's not beautiful, it's not music. And this is an aesthetic question where when we look at AI-generated art, whether it's aesthetically pleasing or not, or whether we like it or not, is it art, is a question that comes up. Because, well, AI isn't conscious in the same way as humans, right? And there's always a human in there somewhere. It doesn't spontaneously produce art. AI does not spontaneously produce anything. You have to prompt it to get an output. As to whether the output itself is art, I think that depends on what the artist wants to present, in a sense. For me, I actually work with the outputs by printing them on paper and manipulating the papers physically in collage, in a collage process. And then I may feed actually a photo of the physical painting back to AI to get a new image. So, like Taika, I think the process is iterative. I work with it in an iterative process. And I wouldn't be comfortable presenting any of the images that I've been able to generate with AI as is and saying this is my art, because somehow aesthetically I haven't been able to produce an image that I thought was meeting my criteria enough. But what are my criteria? They're subjective. So, yeah, it's a very good question, actually, because I think it hits at the role of what is AI for artists, and it also again hits at what is art. Ultimately, I don't think any of us really knows. Or if someone does, please tell us. But should we take another question, or is that it?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. You have changed my mind toward artificial intelligence, but I was wondering if the name is right. I think that it should be like artificial output, because every time I thought of a product of an artificial intelligent machine, I would go like, okay, so it was made by a machine. So like the emotion wasn't there, like human emotion. So would you agree, like this, there will be like a next step for artificial intelligence where will replace it somehow like dance and theater, or will that be like, because of course language is mathematical. If I am doing having like the correct algorithm, I will get through and my message will arrive to you, but maybe the way I express myself will not help to do that. But there is in theater something that is like that I mentioned before, like when the book or the plays in the library, it's just literature. But when it's on stage, it is theater. And then it has the emotion that won't come out from a machine. And that's what we are always, as human, looking for. So what do you think on this?
Well, I'll have a go at that first question, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's probably the last question. But
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, first or last. What you're talking about is cognitive artificial intelligence, and it's usually listed as ghost tech. So if you look up ghost tech, it doesn't exist yet. Although there are some signs where we're beginning to certainly move in that direction. So cognitive artificial intelligence puts that out that artificial intelligence has consciousness or some level of consciousness and emotional sensitivity. And I think it comes to, if we look into the future 100 years from now, are we going to be using the same computational materiality that we have now? We're now seeing Neuralink, this chip that goes into the brain. We've got an organic brain with a non-organic chip. And that's a big shift in computational materiality, because our brains are organic, they're computers, and they're conscious. And machines, with their metal and rare earth metals, are not conscious. So what happens when we change the computational materiality and we have more organic computational materiality? Chances are, if we look into the future, we're going to start seeing maybe the emergence of cognitive artificial intelligence. So I'm open to the idea of it, but I think we have to change our computational materiality to get there.
And on that note,
thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for your questions, for your insights. I think we went through censorship to many other arenas with this last panel, and there are many questions still in our minds. But thank you, everyone. We are going to have a tiny break right now. After that, we will continue with an artistic performance, an art performance of Ayjan Sultan, Marco Annala, and Alex Markwith with some refreshment. That will be at 4 o'clock. Before that, sorry, I still have some notes. Before that, I would like to remind you there are some QR codes that you can give your feedback, which is really highly appreciated. Also, the streaming is over after this. And if you want to rewatch this, if you missed something, if you are still thinking, did I get that right? This is going to be on Lucan's YouTube channel, so you can rewatch it wherever you want to. Thank you.